Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at here is um, shifting perspective to kind of change the tone of your scene. So we've got this normal apartment building. Nothing terribly spectacular about it. The reason I'm using this one here is that it is fairly straightforward 2-point perspective. So we have one plane on the left and one plane on the right, both going off into the distance to a horizon line. And I know you guys should be familiar with at least 1 and 2 point perspective from your 100 level classes. So we're going to change this. I'm going to use something called perspective warp. And every time you use this, you're going to get a little drop or a little pop up here that kind of tells you how it works. So you can look at that, but I'm also going to show you how it works as well. First thing you want to do, get rid of that. And when you click anywhere on your actual workspace, you're going to get this little grid here. And what this does is it's representative of whatever plane we sort of choose to overlap. And I'm going to put it on this left side of the building here. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to take these anchor points and I'll zoom in here so you can see it, zooming in by hitting Command plus. I'm going to grab this anchor point and I'm going to put it right here in the edge of this building here. So I'll put it right here on the very top. And I'm going to slide over. I'm going to hit space and use that to slide over. And I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to put it right here at the very top. I'm not going to go out to the point here. I'm going to put it where the structure sort of visually starts right there, or structurally starts right there. I'll zoom out a little bit, and then I'm going to just bring these down quite a bit. So I'll grab this one and I'll follow that center line, bring it down here. And I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to follow the line of the building, which is again why I didn't put it all the way out on the edge. And what you want to do is you want to drag these down below your actual workspace, and you want to try to match the angle that you have up top as much as you can. So I'll drag this one up just a little bit, and that's pretty close. It doesn't have to be perfect for something like this, but that's relatively close. So now we have one plane of this field with a grid on it. So I'm going to come over here and click the button, left mouse button again, and I'll get a new grid. And we're going to apply that to this side. So I'm going to take this first anchor point here. I'm going to zoom in, take this first anchor point, and I'm just going to overlap the one that we have. And I'll zoom out so you can see this. And then I'll take the bottom left one, and you'll see when I get close, this Photoshop basically figures out, well, it would if it would move for some reason. There we go. There we go. I'm not really sure what's happening there. Photoshop will figure out that it's trying to merge with this one so that it creates an object, and it will snap to. You saw it kind of get the blue kind of light up, and the edge of that one got a little bit thicker, and so it merges those two things as part of the same object. And so here I'll do the same thing as I did on the other side, put it where the actual side of the building is, not this overhang, and then I'll use that as a guide to bring this down all the way down here. And again, we want to try and match what we have up top, and that's relatively close. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, so that's okay. All right, so now we have this wireframe sort of wrapped around what we can see of this building. And now that we have this, what you want to do is come up to the very top, and you've got two little options here. One is layout, which is what we just did. The other one is warp. Once you select warp, that will change the way that this thing looks. You'll get another pop-up telling you what to do, and you now notice that these are all black and white. So we can now take these and manipulate this image. So I could take this and sort of bring these in and manipulate how this looks as far as our perspective as the viewer. So now that we've got this, you can kind of play with it, get it, to look however you want. You don't want to distort it too much, but what I'm trying to do here is basically make this appear as it is a much, much taller and much more imposing building, which I think this does a fairly decent job of it. So again, this will come in handy for you if you're trying to change the tone of whatever composite you're working with. Once you have this, you can hit enter, or you can come up here and hit the little check mark, and that will process that for you. So if you'll notice right now, we have it's sort of warped the entire image based on this, so it kind of manipulated the rest of our frame. And since I didn't make a duplicate of this when I started, I don't have any information behind it. So that's a pleasant reminder to always make a duplicate when you actually start these. Fortunately, we don't need it for what we're going to do. So we got some options here. The first thing that we could do is if we wanted to just crop this, we could. We could come up to like the lowest part or the highest part here that gives us visual information. But then we'd have to go all the way up to here, which means we lose, I'm sorry, a little bit of that building. And then we could come in on the left and right and basically get this. And for the most part, that would probably be fine. But I do want to show you another tool over here just to give you some other options. So for the left and right sides, we can kind of cheat this a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and make a background layer because we're going to need it, and drop it down below here so that we have something behind us. And I'm going to take the rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to come over here and just start on the corner where there's actual visual information as far as the clouds go. And I'm going to take this and, you know what, actually let's back up one step. I'll start down here so we get a little bit more, and then I'll bring it up to about like this, and then I'm going to click on the move tool. And that, if you have your transform controls checked, which you should, that will give you a bounding box which you can then manipulate. So if you hold in the shift key so that you can skew this, you can grab the right side and just make sure you're on the right layer, unlike me. Grab this with shift depressed and just drag it over. So you can see that this is essentially just stretching this, which 9 times out of 10 is not a super good option, but we've got basically just clouds and a pretty soft kind of background here. If this had a lot of detail in it, there's no way that this would work. Everything would be kind of messed up, and it would be super easy to actually see what we've done. So we'll do the same thing on this side. Rectangular marquee, move tool, hold shift, stretch this out. So that gives us a little more space that we can work with. So you can hit enter and just hit any of the selection tools, or go up to select to deselect, or you can hit command D to deselect. So now that gives us a little bit more room to work with. We can do the same thing on the bottom if we want, or we can clone some of this stuff, which I'm going to show you now. I don't think it's worth trying to clone the building. There's a lot of detail. I don't think it's anywhere near as important to try to get that to match up. So we are going to go ahead and crop. I'm going to bring this up to the bottom of the building so that we're going to lose a tiny bit, but it's not as much, not enough to be terribly concerned about. It's a lot less than what we would lose if we had to come all the way up to here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And so now we just have these two areas here on the bottom that we need to fix. And so we can do that by using, we could do the same thing that we did earlier. Like we could just grab this with the marquee and stretch it out, but I do want to show you another way and another tool that you're definitely going to be using when you're making your composites. So the one that I clicked on here is called the clone stamp tool, and what that does is it allows you to select an area in your image and clone it into another area. So basically duplicate and paste it into another area. So the most important thing of this thing when you're doing this is that you have to select a target area. So the area that you select, you hold the option key in and you get this little target. Click your mouse and that will give you your sort of target, or your, I'm sorry, your the basis of what you're going to create your clone of. So when you do that, you can see that I'm just painting in here and it's cloning the area directly, and it sort of blends it together. And I'll go up here and make this a little bit, brush a little bit bigger, and I will just drag it straight over and fill this area in. So again, this works because this is sort of soft and doesn't have a lot of detail, so we don't notice it. If you hadn't seen me do it, it's not going to stand out enough to you in any way to make this look obvious. So again, I'll come over here to this side, hold an option, target some of the cloud up here, come down and just paint it in. And you can kind of see the little plus sign above my brush there. That's the area that it's replicating. So come back out, and so we've got our image here. So I do want to show you kind of how this clone stamp can be very useful. You saw me just replicate the clouds, and that's not terribly impressive, but what you can do is replicate very detailed objects with this. So I'm going to make a target down here on this building, and I'm going to make a new layer so that I don't mess up the one that I was on. And if you see the way I've got my brush over here, you can tell that it has a little preview of what you're about to do. So I am just going to put this right here, and you can see as I paint that I'm mimicking the area over to the left, and I can put a complete pristine version of that building right here. And the more you kind of go over an area, the more it realizes it. So we've got some stuff here that doesn't fit very well, like the little soft edge around the building and then the weird cloud stuff at the top. So if we want, we can come in here and go back. Let's go up to the very top here. Come up here and we can go in and create a layer mask on this and just get rid of the stuff that isn't working for us. So I can come in with a softer brush and just get rid of it. If we don't like the way the clouds are, we can get rid of them, or if we want to, we could use something like the polygonal lasso since we're dealing with a lot of straight lines. And I could just come up here and make these straight lines. And I could use that as a frame to kind of paint this stuff out. And so you can see here on the edge of the building, and you'll notice it on the other one as well, because I didn't go all the way out to the edge, it kind of tweaked the very edge of this. So that's something that didn't get manipulated with the rest of the building. It's not super obvious unless you're actually really looking for it, but it's something to consider when you're making these. And so we've still got this little weird area on the side because of the clouds that are over there, but it doesn't fit with what we're trying to do. So let's get as close to the side of this as we can. And I'm just hitting the space bar to allow myself to slide up the side of the vertical axis of this image and then make this lasso shape so that I can come back in and paint out those clouds in the mask. So now that we have that selection that's going to be our guide, I can get my brush again, I'm on the mask, I'm using black, and I can come in and just remove all of this stuff. And it won't affect the side of the building. There's a little bit that I didn't get, but it's a little bit easier to deal with because we don't have to worry about the building. So then we've got, again, this replica of this shape over here. And if it looks weird, we can always go in and play around with the perspective of it, just like we did with this one. So if we wanted to, we could go ahead and tweak this one so that it matches the perspective of this building here, which I think would be a good thing to do. I'm not going to walk you through that. You just saw me do it here, so you could easily do it with this one yourself. So that is the perspective. The excuse me, the perspective warp is super useful, especially for structures, things that are made of flat shapes. It works really well. It also works on organic shapes, but it just is super, super easy to see on buildings and structures like this. All right, so we're going to move on to another image now.